In this video, we will learn about formulas and functions. So as you can see here, formulas usually they start with the equal sign, and they could include numbers or reference to cells or any combination of both, or they could also include functions that we will talk about functions later. So let's look at the first example here. So if you look there, so this is, if you just type equal 5 times 5, so this is what you get at 25. So that's just a simple formula here. If we have a cell, A5 has a value of 5 and A6 has a value of 6. And if you make a formula A5 times A6, you'll get 25. And if you change the value, let's say if you change this to 4, then it will update automatically there. Make reference cells and numbers, like in this case A5, which is this is the 4 times 2, so that this will give you an 8. And you can make the formulas as much sophisticated as we can, and we will have some examples with different formulas. Like in this case, we have A3, so this is A3, which is 25, minus A5, which is 4, and then divide by 2, so that will give you answer 10.5. So just remember that any formula should always start with equal, and you could do as we will learn about the priorities for different operations. So we could use numbers like 7 plus 3 minus 2 times 5 divided by 3, and then we could use parentheses. How about maybe 4? And you could also use exponents. So the exponents is the you take the shift with the 6. This is the current, and I can make it 2. So that, I mean, this is random number, just to give you an idea what kind of operations we could use, and we will see later which operation has precedence over the random formula. So let's look at the different operations that we could use in Microsoft Excel. So this is the common ones, the addition, like the plus sign, the subtraction, the minus sign, the multiplication, and the division, and the exponent, which is the current. And these are just some examples here how we can use them. And as we mentioned before, we have to use them after the equal sign. So let's if we try these numbers, if you look here, so this is 5 plus 3, that will give you 8, and then 5 minus 3, that will give you 2, and then 5 times 3, if you look in the formula bar, 15, then 5 divided by 3 is 1.67, and finally we have 5 to the power or exponents to the 3, that will give you 125. So remember these operations. We will learn also later about other relational operations and conditional operations, but these are the mathematical operations that we will be using throughout the semester. And then it's important to know if we are faced with in a formula with one of these, they have different precedence, so you have to know which one to do first. And this is the order of precedence there. So usually you have to do whatever inside the parentheses first. Then if you have exponents, this will be the second. And then you have the multiplication divisions at the same level. But if you have both of them, you have to go from left to right. So do the one to the left before you do the one to the right if you have multiple multiplications or divisions. And the last thing is the addition and subtraction. And again, you have to do this from, if you have more than one, you have to do them from left to right when you face them. And I give you an example on how to apply that. So this is kind of important because if you miss that, you will get wrong answer. So let's look at this example here. So I mean, again, I just put in a formula here, and you need to know which one will be processed first. So when we are first, so that we said the parentheses will happen first. So whatever inside the parentheses will happen first. So then when we look inside the parentheses, we have the plus sign and the multiplication. Then the multiplication should happen first. So this is the first thing we need to do inside the parentheses, and then 6 times 3. So this is the 18 happen first, plus 5. Then if you look at the other side, we have to do the parentheses before we do the plus. So then 5 minus 2, this will give you the 3. And then for the other part here, so the exponents, we have multiplication, we have subtraction, then the exponents should happen first. So 3 squared is 9. So now we can simplify it a little here. We need to keep going. Then again, we have to keep, we need to do what's inside the parentheses. So 5 plus 18. So actually we could simplify that. So that's 23. We could do that now. That's 3 squared. Also, we could do this at this point. And then, so we did the 9 times 2 is the 18 minus the 16. And then we do the parentheses before we do the exponent. So 18 minus 16 is the 2. And then we have the exponent. So that's also, then we do the exponent before we do the then we multiply it by the 2. And this, look, if we can simplify this, and then the last step, we just divide 32 by 16 to give you a 2. So you could do that without going into multiple steps. But the way you type that in Excel, so this is how it looked like, and I just put it here so you can see it. And yeah, using parentheses is very important, because if you miss any of the parentheses that will give you wrong answers, so that you get the same answer. So we got 2 when we did it manually, or like a step by step. Then if we did it with Excel also, we get the same answer too. So that's very important, to try to practice that. You have always to keep that in mind for the order of precedence there. Okay, the next topic is functions. There are many built-in functions in Excel that you could use, and you have to know their names exactly how it's written. Otherwise, you can't get it. So like we don't have E, so this is E. exp is for the exponents for E, and here I just put reference to H2. So the H2 is 0, like exponent of 0 is 1. So you can see that refers to this cell. The power is like the same thing like what we did with the shift and 6 with the caret there. So you could do the number, and this is the first argument. We call this argument. The first argument is the number, like power of C2, which is, if you look at C, so C2 is 6, and 6 to the power of 2, which is the 36. So that's power of C2 and the power to 2. This is the function to find the square root, and this is for D2. So if you look for D2, this is 9. So the square root of 9 is 3. So that's mainly what you have there. And then addition or the summation. make sure to use the semicolon there, so that's merely the range. So this is the range between A2 to H2, so that will go from all of these numbers. So that will find the addition, it will add them up. And again, if you click there, it will show you what's the range of elements that are included in the summation there. So that's the addition there. And yeah, keep in mind to remember the parentheses and also the semicolons. If you put something like comma or anything else, you'll get a wrong answer. And then we could find the mean, and the function for the mean is the average. So if you look there, so if I highlight the cells and you put them again, A2 semicolons to H2, so that's mainly, this is A2 and this is H2, all the way the elements from A2 to H2, that will give you the average for these elements. And so again, remember the semicolons, so that's used in many functions like what you see here. The next one is max. So that's look for the largest element. So they have applications that we could be looking for what's the largest element we have among the selected elements, which is in this case from A2 to H2. So that will give you an output of 12, which is what we saw in the answer there. The opposite of that is min, which stands for minimum. So if you look for the minimum and between the given numbers there, so the smallest is the 0, which is the last one here. Another function is the standard deviation, which is, again, we use that very often in engineering and science, and the function for that is tdv dot p, and then you put the range of elements that you want to find the standard deviation for. So like what you see here, so these are the elements, and the range is A2 semicolons to H2, so that will find the average for all of them. Other functions like cosine for the angle, but just remember that's the angle should be in radian, not in degrees. So like in this case B1, so the B1 is 1, so cosine of B1 angle in radian is 1, and the pi, and this is the function for pi is pi with parentheses, empty parentheses. We don't have argument for it. And this is the function that can change radians, can change the angle from degrees to radians, because again, some like the cosine, the sine, they need the angle to be in radian, and if you do that, like radians of 180 degree is pi, which is 3.14. And actually, we could also use function as an argument inside another function, like in this case, like the sine, we could put the radian of the angle. So like 90, we change that to radians, then we ask the sine function to find the sine for the 90 after we convert that into a radian angle. So that will give you a 1. So these are some of the functions, but again, we are going to cover them in more details later. Some of them we use very often, like sum, average, max, min, square root. All of these are very common functions that we use very often. Standard deviation, so you have to remember their names and how they are written. Otherwise, when you need them, you will forget how to find them. Which is actually, if you do that, you can get to the formula, and you click on function, and that can give you. Let me just click out here. Then you can type here whatever you want, and then Excel can search for you, give you some selections if you forget the function that you want. Okay, the next topic, again, when we do the formulas, we may get different errors. These are the common errors that you will see in Excel. So the first one, you can see that this symbols when the cell is small. Let's say if we put large number, and if there's no space for it, then it will change into that error message. Then maybe you can just make the column wider. Okay, so that's the error that you can get. If you divide a number by 0, so this is like infinity, so that's the error for it, is div by 0, which means like you are dividing by 0, so that the Excel does not accept dividing by 0. If the formula requires numbers and you accidentally put text like NA or any other text, you will get num error, which means you have a text instead of numbers. And then when you have a reference, you may reference certain cells and the reference is not valid, then you get a reference error. So that means the formula contains invalid cell reference. So that maybe you copied the formula to another location and you forget to update the references for the formula. Another type of error is the value here. So this is merely show that there is a type wrong type in the formula. So maybe you put, as I said, text when you were supposed to put a number, so that will give you a value error. When Excel does not recognize something you have typed in the formula, again, it will give you a name error. So that they have some similarities, but they are different type of error. And then the last one here is null, which is generally when you, like we did a range of cells, if you put comma instead of semicolons, instead of let's say the summation function, then you will get a null error. So this is usually as a result of typo in your formula. So that's kind of general summary about functions and formulas and order of precedence. So you have to remember that, because we are going to use this in multiple occasions in this course. Okay.